Welcome to the Perfect Pairing Podcast, the cigars of the week. This week is the Rocky Patel Prodigy Connecticut and the Rocky Patel Prodigy Natural. We got two this week, Chris.
And before we get to smoking those two, if you guys don't know who we are already, Adam just said my name. I am Chris, and I am the whiskey expert and the cigar noob.
And I'm Adam, and I am the cigar expert, but the whiskey noob.
And as Adam alluded to, this week we are smoking two cigars. So in a way, we're actually finding the perfect pairing for a red wine, an añejo tequila, and a pretty standard flavored bourbon by trying two different cigars with three different pairings. So we'll see if we can keep track of all that throughout an episode.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting experience going through this. But yeah, I mean, like, we wanted to try and go kind of the opposite route. Like, we always try and find, this one cigar with it is three different whiskeys. But now we're like, all right, let's have three different pairings and find the right cigar. In case you're coming from the wine world or the tequila world or the bourbon world or whiskey in general, you're going to be able to say, okay, I'm coming from wine. This one's going to be better for me. This cigar is going to be better for me. I'm coming from tequila. This cigar is going to be better for me. And same for bourbon. So it's going to be interesting. I've done this myself, but not a lot of people smoke two cigars at the same time. And I'm thinking that you're probably one of those people, Chris.
I have never done two at the exact same time. I have done two back to back, which actually was one of the ways I got a lot better at tasting cigars. Because I tasted cigars before I tasted whiskey. So I didn't really know how to quote unquote refine my palate in anything. And so the way that I did that with cigars at first was I smoked back to back. Never two at the same time that I can think of, where I would like puff one and then puff the other. I don't know if I've ever done that.
Well, your mind is probably about to be blown then, because when you do this is when you really get the different flavor profiles, and especially on a natural and a Connecticut. Uh, they're close enough that they're not going to be too different, but you're going to notice nuances in the cigars. Like if we were doing a Maduro and a Connecticut, it'd be too easy. Probably you'd be like, well, yeah, it's like drinking coffee with no sugar and no cream, and drinking coffee with heavy sugar and heavy cream. It's like everyone's going to notice that difference, even a week apart. But this is close enough that I think we'll get a good read here. The challenge is going to be both of us keeping these both lit.
Yeah, I was just thinking that as I lit the first one. I'm like, oh boy, we're gonna have to have some puff breaks, I think, as we go.
Puff break. I like that. That'll be a funny little. We put it on the screen. Puff break, and you just see both of us.
Yes. Ooh, I don't think I've had a Connecticut in a while. When's the last time? Do we have one on here?
The GTO Corona Connecticut was probably the last one, but that was like 2 months ago.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, I forgot about that flavor. So I guess this will be my noob review because I'm just tasting it right now. This, as far as Connecticut's go, this Prodigy is very like smooth and creamy. And maybe it's because I'm comparing to the Natural, which has a bit more spice, bit more black pepper. But you can see that difference. They both have a common, I call it bready, but that's probably not the correct flavor note, but like that type of easygoing flavor that's not overly sweet, but definitely not spicy either, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I could see that. The Natural definitely has more spice than I was remembering.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pepper. Like, we usually talk about like, oh, it's cracked pepper. Or, this is just pepper. It's a peppery cigar. And it probably is coming out even more because we've got the Connecticut on the other side. But you're absolutely right on the Connecticut. Like, that is smooth, creamy, easy, very classic beginner cigar. For those of you in the Perfect Pairing Club, by the way, you may be shocked right now because you're like, wait, I only got the Connecticut in my pack. We did send out a mixed pack here. So some people got the Connecticut, some people got the Natural in their Perfect Pairing Club pack for August. It's kind of a way that we just decided to, throw a twist at you. So if you missed out on one of these, we are going to have, very little. Like literally maybe 5 3-packs per cigar here, per different cigar. But we will have 3-packs available on the site as usual. of the cigars of the week here. But I think I'm ready to dive into pairing one. What do you think, Chris?
I am ready, and I'm excited to dive into it because I know almost nothing about it. So, in terms of reviewing experience here, so pairing number one, we've got two Vitners. I assume it's pronounced Syrah because I feel like I've heard that word before. Um,
I
so
think
this
so.
is a wine. Go ahead.
No, I said I think so.
I think that's what it
I'm
is.
with you.
So this is their Syrah. The vintage on is 2021. It says Columbia Valley. 14.5% ABV, and this is a red wine that's my extent of my knowledge. That's basically it. So I'm excited to dig in and try it. I don't know if I've ever talked about it on here before, but I enjoy wine on occasion, like at a winery and stuff. And my dad actually makes homemade wine sometimes. So, like, I enjoy it, but I don't review it. Like, I don't like sit down and like, is this a good one? Is this a bad one? Is this
Yeah.
worth the money? So that's basically where I'm coming from starting off with this wine.
Well, I just wanted to make sure before we do anything else too that we give a shout out. This is our first Perfect Pairing Club member contribution to the podcast. Like
Mm-hmm.
Jared out there, you know who you are. We had one of our members, Jared, reach out and he was asking questions about the podcast, and I saw that he worked at a winery, and I was like, hey man, like, does your winery want to be featured on the podcast? He was like, maybe. And then we hooked it up. So shout out to Jared for that. And anybody out there, like, if you work in the whiskey industry, you work in the cigar industry, you work in the tequila, vodka, rum, gin, wine, beer. We've had, I mean, coffee. We've had, we haven't had coffee forever on here.
Mm-hmm.
But we're always welcome. This is a pairing podcast. It just so happens that Chris is the whiskey guy, so we do a lot of whiskeys. But we're willing to pair anything. I mean, shoot, if you work at Hershey's Chocolate, just send me some free Hershey's Chocolate. I'll be good. My wife's pregnant, so she's gonna eat that chocolate up anyways right now.
Yeah, you're gonna have to keep it on lockdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I am. I think that's super exciting to get into a different type of pairing too, because we do so much whiskey stuff, and it also gives us a chance to show the little that we know about it. So, like, I can't speak to this wine too much because for me, I'm like, this tastes like red wine. I will say this is definitely not an overly sweet wine, and I feel like it's not an overly dry wine either. I feel like people might call this a semi-sweet wine, maybe, because it's not like super drying out my palate. It does have like that tingle, like it's got like a sour tingle on your jaws. As far as what the cigars go, first impression with the Prodigy Connecticut, it tasted to me like the Syrah was bringing out like a sugary note in it and maybe dulling some of those more bready, woody type notes, kind of simplifying it almost. And then with the Natural Prodigy, I felt like the pepper still came through pretty nicely. And then it made the wine almost taste like it was aged in like oak, like the tannic flavor almost made it over to the wine, which made it really interesting. So that's where I'm at so far.
Let me ask you this: do you think that both of them are complementary?
Ooh. I'd have to taste what happens to the wine with the Connecticut. I think the second
That's
one's
fair.
complimentary.
That's fair. That's fair. I was a little different on the Prodigy Natural here. The Natural, I thought it brought out that, like, we always talk about the deep dark fruitiness in a cigar that sometimes is a little darker.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like the pepper went away a little bit, and that deep dark fruit was in there. On the Natural though, yeah, it almost, like, if you still have a little bit of that wine on your palate, it almost tastes like a flavored cigar, like a sugar infused cigar, like an acid cigar, or the new Cuba that we had months ago from Aganor Salif. So, yeah, I think this is working. I thought right off the bat that tasting this wine, I was like, this Connecticut's going to get ran over. But overall, I think this one works. I'm intrigued. This is going to be super interesting because now it's like you're in left field, and it's not like you're going to right field.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to a whole new ballpark.
Big time.
And then we're going to go to another. Well, that one, could be like left field to the parking lot. The Añejo to the bourbon.
Right.
that could be like they're closer than a wine and a tequila, but
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be interesting as we go through for sure.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree with you. I think I'd argue that the Connecticut might be antagonistic, but a good antagonistic. I think the wine still tastes mostly the same, and then the cigar got that super sugary, almost infused cigar type flavor to it. The the natural's still throwing me for a loop. Maybe it's because there's so much going on. I'm having trouble like
It's a
figuring it
lot.
out. Yeah, I do still feel like I'm getting some of the pepper, but maybe that's it's hard because we are also somewhat comparing the cigars, and the Connecticut's so light that I feel like I notice the pepper immediately when I jump over to the natural. One thing I wanted to
That's
ask as well, why is it called natural? Well, what's that in
so
comparison to?
yeah. So natural tobacco is the middle. That is really the definition of the middle, like a medium-bodied cigar. So like a natural tobacco is not like, oh, that's just naturally how it is. It's not really that. It's really medium. So like you look at a Connecticut's usually light, even though you can have a Connecticut broadleaf Maduro. So like it's a little confusing. Claro would be the correct term on the shade, right? The
Mm-hmm.
the uh, you know fade of brown, the shade of brown in that. So
Okay.
like Connecticut, people call light cigars Connecticut's because a lot of Connecticut tobacco is light, but
Mm-hmm.
it also can be dark. So it's kind of like one of those things like you call it Kleenex, but it's really a
Right.
tissue. It's like kind of like that, like a tissue could be something else. But
Okay.
so it's like one of those things. So it goes Claro. Then you've got, there's some things that are not really used anymore in shades like Colorado and stuff. I haven't seen that used actually ever in my lifetime since I've been
Mm-hmm.
heavy into cigars, but I know it's on like signs and books on cigars and stuff like that. So then you got natural, and then you got Maduro. But Maduro is
Okay.
the same kind of myth as Connecticut. Maduro is a way of
Mm.
processing cigars. It's not the shade of brown. Brown would
Oh.
technically be, I think, oscuro, even though there's one before that that I'm not remembering. But again,
Mm-hmm.
people talk about Maduro is always heavy. Not necessarily true, just like Connecticut's are not always necessarily light. But natural is is for as much as I know in the middle.
Okay. Okay. Now, where's is Habano one of those as well?
Habano is a type of leaf, type of seed.
Okay. Okay.
So that is usually mid. Habano and Corojo are like cousins. They're
Okay.
usually medium bodied, medium full.
Okay.
I don't know if I've ever seen a Habano or a Corojo that's really light. I don't think I ever have. I don't
So
think they can,
okay.
honestly.
That's a lot to keep track of. But it did give
Yeah.
me time to taste the natural a little bit more with the two Vintners, and I feel like that is more on the complimentary side because I think the cigar, I agree with you about the dark depth that it got to it. I'm still getting a fair amount of that pepper, which I think keeps it kind of exciting. But I feel like there's like a chocolate covered raisin or like chocolate. Have you ever had those like blueberry acai chocolate things? It's not actually a fruit. It's like almost candy.
Stop. Just stop. No, I'm just kidding.
You know what I'm
I
talking about?
haven't. I haven't. No, and
Dude,
I
you're
don't even know
missing
what you're
out.
talking about. But
You're missing out. They're
you're a foodie, and I'm not. This is
yeah, I
just
am.
what we have to accept.
I'm a big foodie. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So, anyways, it's got that vibe to it, though. It's got like dark chocolate and like fruitiness, but like a dulled fruit, not like a candy that like pops out at you, but like a dried fruit. Um,
That's fair.
yeah, and then the Connecticut, I'm sticking with antagonistic. I love the way the Connecticut tastes with the two Vintners, though. I feel like that's a nice. It's a very relaxing pairing for sure.
Both pairings worked really well, almost better than I assumed. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you right here, but I think I got an ash competition going on between my.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you said something. So the natural is looking perfect. The Connecticut, I just corrected because you said that because I realized I had let it go a little bit. I think I just barely missed the top of the foot when I lit it. And I didn't notice until right now. So
Yeah. Rookie
classic
mistake.
Chris.
Even though I I just said I've got a little ash competition. When you're smoking two cigars at the same time, guys, just ash. You
Yeah.
are guaranteed to ash on yourself. And if you've got some good shorts on. I don't have good shorts on right now. I just got some athletic shorts, but I really don't want to burn a hole in them. So
yeah, and make sure you
dash.
keep puffing them because I'm like paranoid about that.
Yeah, if you're coming from the cigar side, you're like, we have no problem smoking the cigars.
Yeah. If you're ever smoking 2 cigars and podcasting, you'd be very careful not to let them go out.
I'm excited to get into our next pairing though here.
Yes, me too. And I did cheat, and I know you caught me earlier, and I started looking into it a little bit while we were talking. Pairing number 2, we've got Cazcanes Anejo tequila. I'm a big fan of this tequila. I want to say it's like mid-shelf. I think this is like $50 or $60. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I'll have to look it up. But it's so tasty. It's got a lot of flavor to it. Only 40% ABV, so nothing crazy. And yeah, I did cheat, and I do already have an opinion about the Prodigy Connecticut.
Go right ahead.
I'm excited to get a little bit more into the natural because I didn't get too far into it yet. But the Prodigy Connecticut with the tequila, dude, talk about a sugary sweet pairing. It makes that cigar once again taste like it's got like a sugar tip to it, like it's infused or something. But then you go back to the tequila, and this tequila tends for me to have like a minerality, like a little bit of a funk to it, which I really enjoy. But now on top of that, the sweetness is brightened up. It's got an agave syrup type sweetness to it. Just an all-around welcoming pairing. This, if you're newer to tequila or to cigars or to both, very welcoming pairing.
Mm. Well, sorry for everybody on the audio there because I was just savoring that flavor. Because holy cow, I agree on the agave, 100%. When you go from the Rocky Patel Prodigy Connecticut to the Cazcanes Anejo, and I was like, I was ready to just tune in, and I was like, let me just tease this natural real quick on my palate. I know Chris is almost done with his monologue. Let me just tease it, and then boom. I mean, my mouth is like still salivating right now. Holy cow.
Mm-hmm.
I love it's so interesting. These cigars are extremely versatile. I mean, we were talking about like we're gonna find out the perfect pairing, and now it's like with a wine and a perfect pairing with a tequila añejo, and then we're gonna find a perfect pairing with a bourbon. I mean, we haven't found a bad thing yet.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it's almost rather now we're gonna tell you, depending on the cigar you like. If you like Connecticut's, boom. And if you like naturals, boom. Like that's really where the ratings are going to come in here at the end, because that natural, I mean, literally, I have to keep swallowing because like I feel like there's such bold, it brings the añejo part of the tequila out so well, a little barrel-y almost, like teasing on the barrel part of that. But the Prodigy is like, it brings it down a little bit. I don't notice spice really at all, honestly. And then it just brings out a beautiful, I think I'm going to call it a rich sweetness. Like,
yeah.
I don't know exactly how to verbalize it like you do, but like a rich sweetness. What would you call that?
And the cigar itself, you're saying?
Yeah. That you're getting like, I mean, like the agave is still there too.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Right away. Like you take that puff and you have the agave, and that turns into, it goes from agave to like, I don't know. It's just, I'm going to call it the combination between agave and tobacco. That's what I'm going to call it.
100%. Yeah, that's actually kind of where I was going with it. I think rich sweetness is a good way to put it. It's a little bit less like the type of rich sweetness where it's like dark, like brownie or something like that.
Yeah, not that.
And it's more like a yin and yang at the same time. Like it's like you get it's like an agave infused cigar where it's like this honey sweetness and this tobacco, not even bite, because you're right, it definitely lowers the bite of the tobacco a little bit. It's just like a tobacco flavor. It's like a more welcoming tobacco flavor, I would say. And I have to correct myself on the añejo. I was way off. It's like $130, which explains why I like it so much. The $50 or $60, I think, is the Blanco, if I'm not mistaken. But I forgot that the añejo is obviously more expensive because it's aged.
Yeah.
But so yeah, it's a little bit more expensive of a tequila, but it's really tasty for that amount of money.
All I'm gonna say here is Rocky Patel, man, you are a wizard, because I don't know how
Mm-hmm.
you created a Connecticut and a natural to pair well with a wine and an añejo tequila, and both of them work really well. Now, if he nails both of these cigars on this bourbon, which I think I'm anticipating at this point, because
Mm-hmm.
we know this bourbon just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shoot, we might have found like two cigars that are great pairing cigars. Like, I don't remember which one it was, but we've had these before. I think maybe
Mm-hmm.
the last one was a CLE Corojo. Like,
Yeah.
it paired well with like everything that we had,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't even. And they were versatile, I think, in the pairings that we had. And it was like, whoa! Like, I don't understand how you're jumping ship. Like, you're talking wine, tequila, bourbon. Like, I don't know how you're jumping left, right, and you're equalizing everything in
Mm-hmm.
a great way, and you're just matching it. You're bringing out the beautiful parts of yourself. I mean, it's just, you know, it's like perfect marriage. If you could be married, two people could be married to three people.
Yeah, no, that metaphor fell apart a little bit, but hey. No, I totally get what you're saying though. I think with the tequila, my last thing is gonna be I feel like the Connecticut, they're both elevated to be very sweet and very welcoming. I think with the natural, I feel like the tequila definitely gets more barrely, a little bit more minerally. I feel like it is dulled a touch, just a touch. But I do love what it does to the natural cigar because you don't lose the excitement of that natural flavor, but you do gain some sweetness on top of it. So that would be my I think well, you'll see in the ratings, I guess. I think I lean towards the Connecticut for me because it's like tequila for me is like a hot day sunshine type drink, and that cigar tastes like a hot day sunshine type cigar right now.
Yeah.
Now, I am excited to get into pairing number 3, though, so I'm just going to jump in. Pairing number 3, we've got Old Forester's 1924. So this is a 10-year-old bourbon. And once again, so we're looking at a red wine, an añejo, and a bourbon. Añejo tequila and a bourbon. And so the idea behind this episode is try to paint with a wider brush. I know that it doesn't always apply across the board, but the idea is to focus on a red wine, an aged tequila, and a semi-old bourbon because this is a 10-year-old bourbon. So just these are all things that kind of hit right in the middle or a more classic flavor for their category. And that's why we're trying to see what happens with that classic flavor. Now, this Old Forester does tend to have a very sugary, barrely profile to me. So I'm excited to see how that plays off the sugary notes on that Connecticut.
I have not had the Connecticut yet, but I can go ahead and mention that the natural is doing exactly what I anticipated it was going to do to the Old Forester 1924. If you've heard my palate's review of this bourbon, and I've said it a lot because I was really obsessed with it when we first got it. It felt like it was finished. It
Mm-hmm.
felt like it had this sweet finish, almost like I was calling it, I think, a Cabernet finish that I
Mm-hmm.
felt like it had, even though it does not, just to be clear. And I was like, this Rocky Patel Prodigy Natural is going to bring out the opposite side of this Old Forester 1924. It's going to bring out the whiskey side, the beautiful whiskey side, and it did. And my goodness, it is so delicious in my opinion. Like that Old Forester 1924 just goes to that rich, just I mean whiskey flavor, like what you
Mm-hmm.
would look in a bourbon. It's in his bourbon, yeah, it's bourbon. It brings out that rich bourbon flavor that I would define that flavor that I just had as bourbon. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's my definition. If I had to be like, if I had to give somebody like, all right, what is bourbon? What does it taste like? Nobody's ever had any whiskey, any tequila, nothing. They'd be like, what does bourbon taste like? I'd be like, do you like cigars? Grab this cigar, take a puff, sip this whiskey. That is pure bourbon right there. It's bourbony
Yes.
bourbon.
Absolutely. You're getting some of the barrel, you're getting some of the spice, you're getting a kind of sugar coating on all of that. And it definitely the thing that you call the finish flavor, that's like extra sweet, a little bit fruity, it definitely dulls that down a bit so that the barrel is really allowed to shine through. Undoubtedly. And let's talk about what it's doing to the Prodigy Natural, because that is now less spicy in my opinion and more like a Oreo cookie. Like it's very like cookie type sweet, less of like a spice type sweet and more of a what's the word I'm looking for? It reminded me of the cookie part of an Oreo, not the cream part of an Oreo, but there's something
Oh my
else.
God, you're right.
Right?
Oh my God, that was weird. I did not get that the first time. I was like, Chris is going on his tangent again.
I saw you questioning me down there.
What on earth? Wow, you nailed that, man. I'm like trying to think of, you know what it is? It's yeah, stop bowing. I get it. I'm turning into, Chris Amite or whatever you would call your followers.
Yeah.
But I don't remember exactly. Yeah, chocolate Teddy Graham.
Yeah, dude.
Dude, you 100%. Just brought me back to being like 5 years old.
Right? 100%. That's what
whiskey,
it is.
You brought me back to 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Chocolate Teddy Grahams.
Absolutely, dude. And I will say, with the Connecticut, I am in love with parts of it, and I'm disappointed by parts of it. I felt like the Connecticut got this really. I've never thought a Connecticut really tasted rich. I think the Connecticut Prodigy with the Old Forester 1924 tastes rich. But I feel like the Old Forester 1924, the spice is cranked up a little bit because like the Connecticut doesn't have enough ammunition to really stand up to it. So I feel like the spicy barrel notes are coming through a lot more, which if you like that, that's good. But it almost is fire and ice. Like you get the ice when you smoke the cigar and it's like sweet and rich. And then you go to the whiskey and it makes it a little bit more like fire.
I think I'm going to disagree a little bit there. I think the 1924, while I think it's lacking that, finish-esque that I was talking about, I still think this is antagonistic. I don't think the 1924 is changing enough for me to be saying that it's changing a whole lot in terms of trying to make it a complimentary or whatever we might describe what you were talking about. But 100%, that cigar, rich. It brings it up to that natural level, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It definitely deepens the type of sweetness. It goes from what would be like a white sugar into more of like a brown sugar, like it's darker sweet.
The Connecticut almost tastes like the natural.
Yeah, the natural without any pairing.
Without any pairing, correct. Yeah, exactly. In the beginning. That is kind of weird. And I apologize to everybody out there, but you can look it up. Best Cigar Prices. They are, just so everybody knows, this is a collaboration between Best Cigar Prices and Rocky Patel. So it is exclusive to Best Cigar Prices. They let us have this so you guys could experience something exclusive, and we could do a fun little pairing here with two cigars. But also, like, what I think they were intending in the natural is definitely coming out here in the Connecticut, but I don't know the blends specifically, but I assume that they are very, very, very similar, except for the wrapper. So it makes sense. I mean, they probably, if I had to guess, are the same blend besides the wrapper. And even so much to the wrapper, it may be the same blend, but the wrapper was processed differently. That is also a possibility. That's like, for example, that's in the West Tampa White and the West Tampa Black. It's the exact same blend. And one of them is a Connecticut and one of them is a Maduro. And it's only because of the way they process the tobacco.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, I mean, they say like an absurd amount of the flavor comes from the wrapper, and you can totally tell that smoking these side by side.
Yeah,
like it's a noticeable difference. I do think I'll stick to my guns a little bit on the 1924 with the Prodigy Connecticut. I feel like, and maybe it's once again because we're doing this comparison. Like I think it's because with the natural they mesh together nicely. With the Connecticut, you can tell there's a little bit of a mismatch, but I don't want to. Mismatch sounds bad, and the way the Connecticut tastes with it is mind blowing. Like it's so weird to taste the Connecticut that tastes this rich.
Yeah.
So I don't want people to think it's a bad thing. It's kind of cool. Like even if the bourbon is getting a little spicier, it's almost worth it to see what's happening to the Connecticut. But that made me realize I have no idea how I'm going to rank these. So I'm going to have to really do some. We're going to have like 10 minutes of silence while Adam and I do some rankings.
Yeah, you know what? Let's do a quick pause here.
Okay.
And then we'll get into our rankings. Guys, we'll be right back.
Absolutely.
And we're back. That was a very interesting little tasting session, and I'm happy that we did that because I don't think we could have done that on camera, and we wouldn't have done justice to you guys out there because we've got 2 cigars, 3 pairings. There's so much going on, so I'm glad we did that. But I'll go ahead and start out with the Connecticut here. Okay, so with the Rocky Patel / Best Cigar Prices, I'll give them a shout out again. Prodigy Connecticut here, I had at number 1. I had this one sitting at a 8.6, the Cazcanes Anejo. At number 2, I had the Old Forester 1924 at an 8.1. Yeah, I almost said 2. I was like, no. Sticking with what I said, 8.1. And with the wine, I thought it was good, but it just wasn't what I was hoping for out of a wine. And I like a really dark, rich wine with a dark, rich cigar. That's like my wine pairing. So with I'm going to get this right, 2 Vintners Syrah and the Rocky Patel Prodigy Connecticut, I had a 7.4.
7.4. Okay. And that I almost missed your Old Forester 1924. That was 8.1?
8.1.
Okay. For those who don't know why I'm like silent and looking down while Adam reads those off, is I write them down so we can reference them in later episodes. So that's what I'm going through right now. And let me just throw in here my last one.
I thought overall that it was, again, it's a great experience. Everything over a 7 is good. The wine has better potential. And I want to leave, this is the first wine pairing we've ever done. I want to leave room for wine to improve in our pairing ratings because we've got some wines that I know of specifically some like 9.5s out there in my opinion. So,
Right. Okay, so let me recap what you just said so I make sure I don't say the wrong thing here. So you just were doing the Connecticut with all 3 pairings. You've got Cazcanes Anejo at 8.6, Old Forester 1924 at 8.1, and 2 Vitners Syrah at 7.4.
Correct.
Okay. So actually I have the same order, so I'll just follow that same order. I have the Cazcanes Anejo. You had 8.6. I had 8.7. That is a fantastic pairing. I mean, that is delicious.
Great pairing.
I had the Old Forester 1924. I dropped down a little lower. I had it at a 7.5. And I guess we'll see whenever we get to the natural rating why I did that. And then with the 2 Vitners Syrah, I had it at a 7.4 as well. It's a good pairing. It's nothing I'd be mad about, but it's also just not phenomenal. Like you said, we got to leave room. I could see there being a really good pairing with that.
Yeah. And then in a Connecticut with a dark-ish wine, that makes sense. That's like this Connecticut with a bright white wine, I think would probably make sense. I'm not a white wine guy, so that would be an experiment that we may have to do someday. But yeah, something that, we'll make wine represented here and we'll see if we can push it a little further. But I'll go ahead with the Rocky Patel Prodigy Natural. I had at number 1, I had the Old Forester 1924 at an 8.9.
Wow. All right.
Loved it. I thought it was great. Even though I love the other side of the Old Forester 1924, I was just super impressed with that pairing. I would have it in a heartbeat, but I know there's a better pairing out there. That's why I left it at 8.9. It is not a guarantee I'm having that. At number 2, I do have the 2 Vitners Syrah. I enjoyed that pairing. Again, this is my wine side. It is a darker cigar. I enjoyed the kind of earthiness of the wine and the earthiness of the cigar playing with each other. I had that one sitting right at an 8.6. So
wow, all right.
I like that one. And the sitting at last place, but this is a gold medal, or bronze medal, not last place. It's a bronze medal. Came in third. I got the Cazcanes Anejo with the Rocky Patel Prodigy Natural, sitting right at 7.9.
7.9. That's what you said?
Yep,
All right.
7.9. And
7.9.
I thought it was good. I thought it gelled well. It just, I think honestly in this, even though I rated the Connecticut higher, I want to see a Maduro with this Añejo. And I don't know what we paired with it last, but I feel like I remember that one being better than this one. So I wanted to make sure I kind of corrected it in that sense with the rating.
Okay. That makes sense. So for me, I actually did have a little bit of something different than you did. So I, at number 1, also have the Old Forester 1924 with the Rocky Patel Prodigy Natural. I had it at an 8.3. So a little bit lower than you, but still a really good pairing. Then at number 2, I actually put Cazcanes Anejo, but it was very tight. I had the Cazcanes Anejo at 7.6. I had the 2 Vitners Syrah at 7.4. For me personally, I think maybe this just isn't the type of wine that I would normally drink. Like, I don't really even know my palate for wine, but I feel like maybe it's a little sweeter than this, which I know is surprising probably since I drink so much bourbon. But maybe when it comes to wine, I usually go a little sweeter or something. But
well, you do cigars as well, so it kind of makes sense. Like,
that's
you
very
like
true.
The sweeter cigars, so
that does make sense.
Yeah, I could see that with your wine palate. Like, you might be more on the white wine side than the, like, I like a really heavy cab. Like, that is my wine, and that probably isn't where you're going. But it's funny because I'm not a really heavy whiskey guy. I'm more like right at 100 proof is where I think in my sweet spot. From what I'm discovering. But let's go to the 4th pairing. What would you have next with each cigar? This is tough because we got 2 cigars to think about too. This is tough, but let's start off with the Connecticut. If you want me to, I can start off.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm going to throw this for a loop just because of how it did today, and specifically with that Cazcanes Anejo right there. I'm going to have it with the Cierto Anejo. And I think, like, we're staying in the high-priced tequila market there. But I think it's a step up in, like, body. I think the Cierto tequila is heavier, but I want to see – I want to really test because I love tequila. For those of you that don't know, and this might be your first time watching, love tequila, big tequila guy, probably my number 1 spirit. And I want to know. I love finding my tequila pairing, so I want to just keep going with it. So that's what I got there.
Yeah, I think with the Prodigy Connecticut, I would do a white wine, kind of like you said. I'm curious if you took something super sweet, like a Moscato, with this cigar, would they amplify each other's sweetness, or would you have kind of a curveball? I'd be really interested now that we're trying these wines. I want to know what would happen with that. And then I think with the natural, I'd go the total opposite direction. I think I would go something very oaky. Like, I think I would go with like a Nulu French oak bourbon. So it'd be like really oaky and have some proof behind it, even more oaky probably than the Old Forester 1924, and then see what happens with that.
Interesting approach. I want to see a little kick. I want to see how much this has to play. I'm going, my 4th pairing would be Old Line Navy Strength.
Ooh, I forgot about that. That's a good one.
Yeah. Sneaky bourbon that we've had probably twice, I think. So
American
far,
single malt. American single
malt, correct.
But yes.
But sneaky one that I think I would be intrigued to see if the natural could play with it.
I think you're right. I would, if I could change my answer, I think I forgot that existed. We need to have that back on. That's an interesting one. Okay. I like that.
Chris. Well, I'm going to have to go try that, actually.
I might have to, too.
I still have some cigar left. So, man, great episode again, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.
Absolutely. Cheers.